All right. On the Cassie couch today, we have Sheila, and she's here sharing her story with us because we are survivors of sexual and domestic violence. How are you, Sheila?
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm really excited that you wanted to share with us. It's very important for us to start sharing, healing, and living. And the fact that you chose Joseph Beth Bookstore, what made you want to shoot here?
My favorite place to go. I mean, I can eat here. I can read books. I can curl up on the couch. They don't. They don't like me sleeping here though. But generally, and I love the staff.
Sounds fabulous. I'd never even thought about coming here, but I'm glad that we did, and they've been very welcoming. So thank you so much to Joseph Beth. So I want to talk about you. I want to talk about you now. Give me a little bit about who you are right now. You know what you do.
I'm an actor. I write. I'm retired from my day job, which is a big thrill. Um, I'm looking forward to the next 20 or 30 years. I've been married twice, but neither one of them turned out well, but my life is good. My life is wonderful. I'm involved with a lot of charities, and in fact, I think I've driven towards charities. I work with a group that has 28 charities in it, and it's like we fundraise together, and it's called Community Shares. It's really kind of cool, and we all deal with social and environmental issues, justice issues, and justice issues are what we're talking about today, is and social issues. What is it that makes for a good life, and what protection do we as human beings have in this big world? And sometimes in our lives, especially when I was younger, there didn't seem to be any protection at all. The laws were not as firm as they are now.
This is true, and the prosecutors, and I'm guessing we're talking more right now about the issue at hand, the domestic violence issue, and there was really not much help. Now, how long ago did you have a situation that you're now free from?
Well, I got married when I was 22, and I got divorced when I was 25, and I didn't think I'd live to be 25. Um, when we first moved to Cincinnati, after we'd been married and lived a couple places, we moved to Cincinnati and moved in with his parents. And let me say now that all of this is long in the past, and he has learned many lessons along the way, and he's a responsible person. But at the time, he was doing drugs and alcohol, and I had no concept of drugs or alcohol because it was that long ago. And when he beat me really badly, my mother-in-law, with whom we lived, said, if you complain, we'll have you committed to a mental hospital. So that's long enough ago that you know when mental hospitals.
What?
Yes, you could do that then. You could have your family. You could have your family could put you in a mental hospital, and you had no hope.
Because you complained that you were being abused.
Right.
So did her husband abuse her? Was it something that went on in the family?
I don't think he abused her, but I think she didn't want anybody to know that her son had problems. And if I attempted to expose that in any way, that would be the end of me as far as she was concerned. So I was afraid to do anything. My own mother believed that anybody who was beaten deserved it, so and said so to me. So I know I could get no help from her.
Could you just give me a generalization of what era this was in? What year? Around that time.
Sure, it was in the 70s, the early 70s. We hadn't the I was later on I worked on the Equal Rights Amendment. I became a feminist. I was actively involved. This was after this. Now I went on to law school. I did all sorts of things. But at the time, a husband could do pretty much what he wanted to. My husband used to stop by my work on payday and pick up my check, even though I told them not to give it to him. And fortunately, he got sick one time, and I got my check and deposited it so he couldn't get at it. But he felt he had a right, and they felt he had a right. When I asked them not to give it, he says, "It's your husband. He has a right to your check." Life has changed.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I can barely even, I mean, I can't even go visit somebody at the doctor without them wanting my firstborn child or trying to find information out about my children at the school. And they're like, well, we need to see your ID and this, that, and the other. But picked up your check, huh? And they said he had a right to it. Times have changed so much. I mean, so then there was no place for you to get help. I mean, was it,
Not yet. Not yet. It was very early in the 70s. And if there was a women helping women, I don't think it existed yet. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it didn't exist yet, but it did soon after that. There, it was a time where if someone was raped or beaten, it's you against them. You know, that's who would believe you. You're a woman.
and how did you deal with that? I mean, now you know that we have the initiative to share, heal, and live. Um, then back in the 70s, how did you deal with that? Did you just internalize it and just keep going? I mean, how do you think it affected you?
Oh, I can tell you, I went to work. I didn't talk much to people because I was such a nervous wreck. I went down to 90 pounds. Right now, I weigh 153 pounds. So you can imagine what 90 pounds looked on me. I looked like an Auschwitz victim. I mean, when you see pictures of them, every bone stuck out. I was such a nervous wreck. I couldn't. When my husband allowed me to eat because he controlled the money or gave me money to eat, then I get to eat. So I never had more than a meal a day, and sometimes I didn't even have that.
So it wasn't just physical, you know, abuse. It was mental and emotional as well.
And I was always afraid of what would happen next because with the drugs and alcohol, he didn't remember what he was doing. He was blacking out. So he would do things and not realize. And I was afraid he was going to kill me. He also was a hunter, so he had lots and lots of guns. So fortunately, I grew up in a more rural kind of world. And so I knew to take the firing pins out of his guns. And that was good because one night I woke up in the middle of the night and a shotgun was pointed against my temple, and he pulled the trigger. And I was sure, I mean, that split second I said, I'm dead. But, you know, when you wake up, you're not going to think firing pins aren't in there. All I could think was he realized that, put the firing pin in, and decided to shoot me. But he didn't because he had just gone and loaded a shotgun. And he went down to get another gun because that one didn't fire. And he tripped down the steps and went through a glass door. So he got cut badly enough that we'd call the ambulance and he had to go to the doctor, go to the hospital. And I got his parents to go with him, saying he was too upset for me. And went to my next door neighbor, dragged a little suitcase over on my sewing machine, and packed her car. And the next morning, when I went to work as usual, when he got home, he didn't remember what happened. He had no remembrance at all of any of that, and was quite astonished when I left him. I figured he was too dangerous to me. I would be dead. I assumed I'd be dead. So, but here's the part that got me. When I went to court, the lawyer said, well, you're not going to get anywhere with him beating you or trying to kill you. The only way you're going to be able to get a divorce is that he doesn't have a job right now, and so he's not supporting you. So if he killed me, I assumed he'd just have to go to jail, but they didn't care about that. What they cared about is whether or not he had a job. Yeah. That's what I said too. I said, what?
Are you kidding me? I mean, what?
Yeah. And so the lawyer didn't even bring it up because he said they just tried a case right before me in which the man had attempted to kill the woman, and he had been beating her, and the judge just threw it out. So
That is amazing to me. I mean, you know, I wasn't, you know, I guess privy, if you could say that, to that generation and that line of thinking because right now, I mean, for the most part, they prosecute for everything, you know, and yeah, and of course they've got more forensics and they're more interested and more passionate about, you know, jailing and accusing and prosecuting abusers. But that line of thinking, I can't even fathom that. I mean, that's just like something somebody would just put in a movie just to mess with your head. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's then he stalked me after that.
I wanted to ask you. So when you left, and he came home and he didn't remember what had happened. What happened then? Did he come looking for you? How long before you saw him again?
It took him 3 days before he realized I wasn't there. If I'd known that, I would have left earlier. 3 days later, he called me at work and said, "You didn't come home." I said, "It's been 3 days. You didn't notice?" He said, "No, I guess not."
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, he didn't come to your job looking for you or anything, but he didn't start stalking you till after you went to court.
He waited, and he involved a member of my family who told him where I lived. Yes, a much younger and naive member of my family.
Okay. Who was not aware of the abuse that was going on?
I don't think cared.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm. This is just totally beyond me. So how did you? I mean, you didn't have anybody to talk to. Did you go to counseling, or was that even? Well, you said it wasn't available then. How did you cope?
Well, what I did was right after that I joined Now, and they had the closest thing they had was a divorced women's group, so that we could at least talk about things, and that was the closest I got.
Were there others in the group who had been abused or that talked about it?
For the most part, no, they weren't abused. I mean, I've met lots of women since then who were abused. Um, Most of them, just found themselves left for younger women or something. But no, I was in that group. I think I was the only one who had been abused. The rest of them had just found themselves women they were much older than me at that time. They were women in their 40s who suddenly found themselves without their husbands. Their husbands had gone and found younger women. So they had a completely different set of issues than I did.
Have you found that over the years? I mean, here we are in 2012 now. Have you joined any groups? Have you started sharing? Have you talked about it? I know that you said that you work with a lot of outreach organizations, but what are you doing for you?
I haven't shared it much. I think I didn't share it for a long time. I shared it with my niece when her husband acted that way. And she finally did separate from him and get a divorce. And they're much more amicable now that they're not married to each other. It's kind of interesting is that my father wasn't like that at all. My father, not her father, my father wasn't like that at all. So I'm just not sure uh, how I managed to choose. But I think the same man I married was a perfectly quiet, nice fellow who got involved with drugs and alcohol and wasn't able to control it. Now, 7 years after a divorce, after he got sober, he apologized to me because he realized what he had done and that he was wrong. And of course, I forgave him because I realized alcohol and drugs caused him to do it.
So he's clean and sober now.
He's clean and sober, remarried, very happy. Yeah.
So it's obvious that alcohol and drugs can create a monster.
They can, and though I'm very much now, I didn't at the time, I didn't understand it. I'm very much in favor of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon because it teaches people that it doesn't have to be that way. They can change their lives despite the alcohol and especially for the Al-Anon, for the spouses of people who are abusive because of alcohol, is protect yourself first and be loving, but you don't have to put up with the abuse at all.
This is so true, and that's one of the things that we want to, the messages that we want to get out there. I mean, now we are survivors and we can talk about it. For a long time, we have not, but we want to encourage people who are in the situations, who are still victims or have the victim mentality where they don't know that they can leave or don't believe that there is life after abuse. And there is life after abuse. I mean, Sheila is doing so many things and helping so many other people get past the things that have happened to them. based on the fact that she has experience and she knows that survival is possible.
Well, not only possible, I mean, I was in about the rankest poverty you could imagine at the time. It was amazing how many people were willing to help me once I pulled myself out of it. Then people appeared because they kept saying afterwards, when I asked, why didn't you help me before? He says, because until you pull yourself out, we are just assuming we're wasting our time. Is that you have to decide for yourself you want free.
And that's so true. I mean, the statistics show that if you're in a relationship, an abusive relationship, and you leave, chances are you're going to go back. You know, he loves me, or I love him, or he didn't mean it, or it was a, isolated incident or things like that. And it isn't until you actually leave that people see that you're serious about it and that you don't want to be in that situation and you want to make a difference, which is, what our Back to Life Fund is about. When you donate to the Back to Life Fund, it's put in place for survivors who are moving on to life after abuse, people who need assistance with their first month's deposit, or maybe with child care, or getting that car, so that they can separate themselves from that abusive situation. So it's important that you are serious about getting away and that there is help for you, and that's a good thing. I mean,